On behalf of UN Water Expert Group, Water and Climate Coalition, I would like to welcome you in this side event. Water Action as an Answer to Climate Change, Collaborative Approach for Resilience. This is a UN Water side event put together by UN Water Expert Group, co-led by UNESCO, WMO, and UNEC with Water and Climate Coalition. In this session, we will hear from leaders, youth, national stakeholders about national perspective, international agenda, water and its role in as a solution in management. And we will start with the message from UN Water Chair, Mr. Gilbert Hongbo, Chair of UN Water and member of the Water and Climate Coalition Leaders Panel. Let's put a video of UN Water Chair.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, around 3/4 of all disasters between 2001 and 2018 were water-related. In a very real sense, we experience climate change through water, in flood, rising sea levels, and contamination, or through its absence in wildfire and drought. Today, the crisis is worsening. Water scarcity could displace 700 million people worldwide by 2030. By 2050, 2 billion people could be vulnerable to floods. Making development sustainable, responding to climate change, and reducing the risk of disasters all are about managing water more effectively. That's why, under the umbrella of the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework, the work of the High-Level Water and Climate Leaders Panel to bring about an integrated global water and climate change agenda is so urgent. Improving the way we manage and use water is central to mitigating and to combating climate change. Our job at UN Water, with our members and partners, is to highlight the importance of water in the climate change agenda here at COP26 and beyond. We must do more to make the water cycle more resilient to climate change. I hope today's event will help win water its rightful priority position on the climate change agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, as we have heard from UN Water Chair, improving the way we manage water is really important, and we have to do it now. And as he laid out, UN Water Expert Group put together climate change and water, a policy brief, UN Water Policy Brief. And I would like to encourage all of you to go through policy brief, which is available online at the UN Water website, but also some of the copies might be still available here in our pavilion. The key messages of this policy brief, which calls water as a solution to climate change. Water really provides solution, and we need to act now. As UN Water Chair said, there is no time to wait. We don't have any minute to wait. We have to wait. We have to act now, considering water as a part of the solution. Also, we need to improve water management practices, and we need to ensure transboundary cooperation in adaptation. There is no single solution. One country can solve the water problem alone. We have to bring countries together. We need to bring really scientific information, knowledge, and disseminate, and make science open to all, accessible to all. And also rethinking financing, thinking water first to put water in the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, with these key messages, I would like to also tell your delegation to take this policy brief, the key messages, so that they can negotiate to put water in the forefront of the agenda. And this is what UN Water calls for. With that, I would like to now take the opportunity to hear the voice of youth. We need to bring youth in the agenda, as we have borrowed from them. We need to really think about them. And we have before us today Miss Lindsay Blodgett, the World Youth Parliament and Water member of the Water and Climate Coalition. She was trained as a water risk assessment expert, and she works on youth and water for non-profit sector. She is a youth leader in the coalition, and this World Youth Parliament for Water is covering around 30 countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And I would like to invite her to make her remark. Please, Lindsay, you have the floor.
Thanks, Anil. %40 of the world's population is young people. That includes ages 25 to 15, as well as children, 40%. Therefore, it's of vital importance that the voices of young people are definitely heard in this coalition, and I'm here to make sure that that happens. In 2023, there will be a UN conference that reviews SDG 6, and part of the coalition will be gathering young voices and doing consultation meetings around the globe to make sure their voices are heard. In order to get this work done, we'll be working with the Secretariat of the WMO to collect these voices. In a way, youth are not a country. We don't have a delegation, so it's important that the collective voices are gathered together. So far, we've been able to identify several water and youth organizations. Happening just yesterday, actually, was Youngo, or 2 days ago was Youngo, the Youngo conference. And those perspectives were actually drafted into a packet, a statement, and we were thoroughly involved in that process, and we will include that in the upcoming proceedings. So again, just to iterate, the voices of young people really matter, and as a part of the coalition, myself and another delegate were here to represent that large part of the population, to gather their voices, to make sure that they're included in policy making, and not just an advocate, not just an agency, but part of the policy and development change. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Lindsay. Indeed, as I said, we have borrowed time and energy and precious resources from the youth, so we need to leave behind all these resources for them, and really highlighting that 40% of the population covered by youth. So we really need to put youth in our agenda. And with that, I would like to now inform you that after hearing from youth voice, we will go into a very interactive panel session, which will be moderated by my friend and colleague. As I said, in the UN Water, UNESCO, WMO, and UNEC, we coordinate UN Water Expert Group. And also, this event is jointly organized by Water and Climate Coalition. So my friend and colleague, Johannes Kuhlmann, Director of Water and Cryosphere of WMO, will moderate the interactive panel session. Johannes.
Thanks a lot, Anil. Welcome, everybody. I am happy to be here with our panelists today. I want to introduce live on the stage Ingrid Timboy. She works with AGUA. That's an NGO that provides knowledge about what we need to do, what are the gaps in terms of analyzing, tracking what needs to be done to achieve SDG 6. We have hopefully online. Can we see our online participants? Can we put them on the screen here for the audience to see them also? We have Tom Williams here from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Tom and the coalition are trying to figure out what are real actions that we can take to make a step change in how we integrate water and climate solutions, of how we go away from talking about it and actually linking it to the business sector, to the economy, to the day-to-day of the people. So what we have with Lindsay here for the youth, we also need to replicate and really ingrain into the economic activities and the real business of this world, because if we only talk politics or policy, we will not change anything. And then also on the screen, I hope we have Edith Felicitas. Can we show her? Do we have her on the screen? Good, here she is. She joins us from Nigeria. She is the chief scientist of the Nigerian Environment Ministry, and she will give us hopefully some insights on what we can do in a context where we need to integrate into a community of developing people, and integrating this with the environment and the conditions, so that we can develop a decent life on the planet without prejudicing the environment that we have. And last but not least, we have Juan Botero on the screen also today. Can we also see him? So, Juan. Okay, we have some connection issues with him. He is the Vice Minister for Agriculture from Colombia, but I hope we will have him later on the screen. Now, without further ado, I would like to ask Edith, first of all, from your perspective from Nigeria and as the chief scientist in an environment ministry, what are the things we need to do? What are the 2 or 3 things we need to do immediately to stop reversing the trend that we are losing water from our environment? We are losing at the moment, in the last 20 years, 5 times more water than the humanity consumes in terms of fresh water every year. This is data from the GRACE mission, so we are dewaterizing our environment globally, and at the same time we need aquatic healthy ecosystems to ensure we have the ecosystem services for our people to live a decent life. And I would like to really know from Edith, what do you think are the most important things in terms of bringing science to the table and making science actionable? And how does that relate to what you are doing? And can we make sure we have that in the nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement and in our national adaptation plans? So Ingrid, Edith, the floor is yours. She's not on anymore? Yeah, but...
Hello, can you hear me?
I've asked a colleague from Nigeria, yeah, can you please put her on the screen? Okay, we have some technical issues with Nigeria as well, so I will go back to the people who are actually in...
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, okay. So can you please, did you understand my question?
Yeah, yes, the network was actually not so good. And let me start by saying that I'm very pleased to be here with you today and to talk about the issues of water, which is very paramount to us. And you know that Nigeria has revised its nationally determined contribution. And before now, in 2015, we had 5 sectors in the NDC. But currently in the submitted NDC, we have now included issues of water and waste, which shows that it is very paramount to us, and it is an aid for sustainable development. And how we have seen it in Nigeria is that water is serving as a connector to a lot of global agenda, Water is serving as a connector for the Paris Agreement. Water is also serving as a connector to the SDGs and also serving as a connector to the Sendai framework, and which is the disaster risk reduction. So basically what we did is to highlight what are the mitigations and adaptation components of the water system that we also aid people's livelihood in Nigeria, and these are reflective in the NDC that we submitted. So basically the government is taking proactive measures in terms of energy efficiency in ways and manners of how to integrate issues of water and its strategies and policies to national development. So I'm not too sure if I had your question clearly, but if there's something else you want me to add, please kindly go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I would maybe just come back to you right away and ask if you had all the possibilities to decide what needs to be done now. What are the two things you would prioritize in terms of making sure that in Nigeria we create a future that, as we have heard, works for youth, works for the environment, but also works for the economy? So what are the two things you would prioritize?
Basically, the two things I feel that should be prioritized as a recommendation from the government side is for us to make sure that there is whole societal approach. There's whole societal approach, and there's integrations of institutions that is responsible for issues related to water to undertake detailed assessment of Nigeria water sector vulnerability to climate change. Adaptation strategies and measures should be based on the result of vulnerability assessment, as well as on development objective stakeholder considerations and resource availability. So analysis, there should also be to analyze national level cross-sectoral and within sector water commitments, maybe in particular in regions of the country that are facing water scarcity or flooding, which will disrupt rather than help water availability and may cause long-term damage to water infrastructure. This is to increase national understanding of where surface and groundwater is currently budgeted nationally and where it might be needed to shift to support climate mitigation and adaptation activities in country.
Thanks a lot, Dede. That was very clear. I would now like to turn to Ingrid, and sorry for mixing up the names. It has been a long day. And Ingrid, you work in Agua, and you are trying to help us understanding where the gaps are in terms of what we need to do with national policy development, but also maybe with information. So can you tell us a little bit about your view in terms of making sure that we develop this at the country level, that we know at the country level what is needed, but also give a perspective maybe on the partnerships we need, because it is pretty clear, I think, after analyzing, I don't know, the cooperation potential in the Zambezi River and in the Nile River Basin and in the Mekong, and I come from the Rhine River Basin, where it is super clear that no country in Europe alone can resolve water adaptation. So what are your perspectives? What would you like to tell the public in this COP?
I'll just stay seated. That's okay. Great. Fantastic. Thanks, Johannes, for the question. It's something we talk about a lot, right? You'll hear it for the next 2 weeks here in the pavilion. We really need to integrate water into climate plans. But what does that mean? So just to give a couple of examples of the types of things we're talking about, it was already mentioned by our speaker from Nigeria, but a whole of government approach. There needs to be, at the national level, mechanisms to facilitate coordination across whole of government systems, because we know that water is actually primarily used outside of the water sector itself. So we need to connect agricultural ministries, we need to connect finance ministries, planning ministries, also water ministries, environment ministries, etc. And so that's something that, for example, the government of Egypt is actively doing. They have in place coordination mechanisms, several of them, one of them funded by the GEF, that is helping them do integrated planning at the national level, which is really important. Another thing is capacity building, local, national capacity building. This is something that there's another project that AGWA is involved with called the Adaptation Academy, which I mentioned in the last session. There'll be a whole session on it next Monday if you want to learn more about that. But it's working directly with national adaptation planners and other government officials on increasing their internal knowledge and capacity to actually address adaptation in a holistic way. And water plays a really central role in the Adaptation Academy. We just had our first Adaptation Academy sessions last month. There were over 100 participants from, I think, about 70 countries already that have participated in that. And so that's going to go a long way to pushing us further on actually integrating water into national climate planning. The other thing I want to mention, which Johannes mentioned, is taking a landscape or basin approach to things, because as we know, one single country cannot effectively do adaptation efforts, especially when you're talking about water. So water doesn't know political boundaries, and so we need to make sure that we are working at a transboundary scale. And there are a number of institutions, UN Water works on this, UNECE and others that are working to facilitate transboundary cooperation on river basins. And then one other thing that I would mention is also including a lot of local coordination as well. We're talking about national planning, but really it's implemented at the local level. And so if you're not including local stakeholders, networks, et cetera, in the national level planning, it's really not probably going to be effective. And one country that's doing a really great job on this is Costa Rica. And they were mentioned in the previous session as well, but they do extensive stakeholder engagement, local coordination in the actual setting of priorities. So they don't just bring them in afterwards and say, here's what our priorities are, how can you help us achieve these priorities? But they actually integrate them into the planning, into the first phase of saying, what are your adaptation needs? And then working to come up with national level solutions that fit those plans. So just a couple of examples there, which you can talk about more. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Ingrid. I would like now to ask Tom Williams from World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We always say we need the private sector. We know that financing in terms of what is also discussed at the COP, the 100 billion a year, this is not going to make it without really involving the private sector with its financial power. We will not make a step change in providing sustainable futures for our people. So Tom, there is often this, yes, we want to work with the private sector, but how do we really actually make it actionable for the private sector? What do you tell the COP people, which are politicians, NGO people, people like me or Lindsay, or I see in the audience here we have people from IPCC, from different stakeholders. So what do we need to, how do we need to formulate proposals or propositions so that the private sector changes their mind from corporate social responsibility, nice type to have projects, to actually really changing business operations for a sustainable future? Tom.
Great, thank you, Johannes, and thanks for painting the picture of the audience, because I can't see them, so it's good to hear who's there. Great to be part of this discussion. And I think, as you were introducing, great, largely untapped opportunities for increasing engagement with the private sector around water action and climate change. For too long, we've seen the private sector being reactive to water and climate change challenges, which often leads to inefficient, costly, and counterintuitive responses. I think we need to get into a more proactive mode, and this can only be achieved through this collaborative approach that identifies some common ground among stakeholders. And I think that the Water and Climate Coalition is a great space to do this. And I want to focus on 3 areas for private sector engagement and then 3 related policy asks that will better enable that engagement. And these areas of engagement are supply chains and specifically the role of small, medium enterprises. Secondly, on infrastructure. Third, on financing, and you just raised the important opportunity of private capital. And across these 3 areas of engagement, I want to emphasize the need for business to support a human rights-based approach and ensure that the value of water is embedded in decision-making, because I think these are 2 levers that are really critical in supporting these areas of engagement. So first, on supply chains, and COVID has really exposed their vulnerabilities. And when we think of this vulnerability in the context of climate change impacts, we should look at supply chains that are most impacted, those that depend critically on utility and infrastructure networks or natural resources in their supply chain. So food and energy, for example. And if we look specifically at these supply chain vulnerabilities, it's largely about small, medium enterprises, SMEs, and their capacity to adapt. They need to have access to data, finance, and technologies that support their adaptation. And as we seek to find ways to match climate ambition with ever narrowing national interests, investing in supply chain resilience that targets small and medium-sized enterprises is really a surefire way for governments to invest in socio-economic development and also resilience. Secondly, on infrastructure, the private and public sector already share critical infrastructure, but they could do so much more together, whether it's conventional grey infrastructure or nature-based solutions. And I think a huge untapped area in this space is around wastewater. Wastewater presents a climate and a water challenge for both business, industry, and the public sector, but also it's a resource. And I think we need to explore how, at scale, wastewater can be a resource for industry in the food and agricultural space, energy production, and other manufacturing sectors that are dependent on water. If there is a compelling business case, then industry will invest. The public sector needs to learn how to create attractive investment opportunities for business around wastewater reuse. And this brings me to the 3rd area on finance. As I mentioned, with a clear business case, industry will invest resources because there is so much potential in combining private sector and public sector capital instead of those financial flows occurring in parallel. So we need to think about how we can leverage public sector finance for private capital. And one example around this is rice. This is a crop that is a large water user. It's impacted by climate change. For business, the margins for rice are low and farmers require support to transition to sustainable rice practices. The public sector needs to incentivize and support farmers to adopt such practices, and business can guarantee long-term purchasing based on farmers adopting standardized sustainable practices. In this way, the purchasing power of business is directed to producers who are most resilient. And then 3 policy asks that support this collaboration. First, we need policy measures that support TCFD implementations. For those of you who don't know what TCFD stands for, it's a Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, which provides a framework for how business should report and disclose on climate-related risks and opportunities. Ultimately, what this aims to do is direct capital flows to those businesses that are managing these risks and opportunities at the pace and scale that they need to be. The more governments that mandate these kinds of disclosures, the more business will need to respond to water and climate-related risk, and the more capital should flow to those solutions managing that risk. Secondly, data. For all the things I mentioned earlier, SMEs, infrastructure and finance, we need better data acquisition, management and sharing systems in place. I think we need a huge effort from government to set a framework for water-related data management. And thirdly, capacity building. And we heard about the importance of this from Ingrid. Government needs to invest in developing water stewards, from farmers to accountants, from urban planners to school children. The private sector needs partners that have the capacity and the capability to collaborate. So in summary, to enhance private sector collaboration, I would say we need to invest in SMEs, particularly those in vulnerable supply chains. These are the backbones of our economy. Second, create attractive opportunities for business investment in infrastructure, where there are clear co-benefits for the public sector and the private sector. There should be plentiful opportunities. And thirdly, direct public finance towards areas of the market that business can scale through their capital. This should be informed by mandated disclosure by business of their climate-related risks and opportunities, exactly like what is put forward by TCFD. So hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the priorities where I see good opportunities for private sector engagement. and some of the policy needs to actually accelerate and scale that engagement.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tom. I think I'm on the air again now. So we are half through our event, and I want to do now a little bit round where we involve the people that sit here and listen to you, who are mostly online. So make it a bit more interesting for the people who are here. Is anybody sitting here who wants to say something or who wants to ask one of our panelists, including the ones online or physically here, a question? Is there anybody who feels motivated to come in, chip in at this moment? Yeah, we have somebody here. Thanks a lot. So can you just introduce yourself, say who you are, and...
Natalie Bennett, Green Party member of the House of Lords. And my question really is, how do we, the absolute basics, with water so much privatised, how do we ensure people can get access to their basic needs, which is something which is so much under threat?
Yeah, that is a very provocative question. I don't know, is anybody feeling enlightened to answer this right away? I don't know.
I'm happy to, Johannes, if you want.
Yeah, Tom, do you want to take a shot?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to the comment I made earlier about the human rights-based approach that should be and is being embraced by business. But this human rights been adopted since 2010, and we simply haven't seen the kind of progress that we should be seeing by now in terms of government realizing that human right. And I think with climate change impacts, the need to enshrine that human right within national legislations and to make sure that it's actually being followed are going to be even sharper. So I think we really need to make sure that the human rights-based approach is adopted, widely understood, and those that are responsible for it should make sure it's seen through. We have the human rights in place. It's now really about implementing it. And as I mentioned, I think it's only going to be a heightened need with the impacts of climate change.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I think you allude to something that is a super important discussion. There are some really big roadblocks in this because transparency is the enemy of corruption and nepotism, and people don't really like to disclose at some point, and sometimes what I don't know, privatization businesses or operations mean. So in many countries, we have extractive economic systems that extract the benefit from societies or from the environment and give it to companies or single people who are in power, and that is one of the worst enemies of sustainable development. So we need to think together how we can overcome extractive systems and go to inclusive systems where all the people partake in operations and in deciding about privatizations or whatnot. But the water privatizations in the EU are one of the examples where we have had a massive public engagement against some of the water privatization laws that were ongoing some years ago. So there is actually some hope. But now I want to give the floor to one of our prominent people in the audience. We have Abdallah Moqsit here, the Secretary of the IPCC, who wants to ask something.
Thank you very much, Johannes, and thank you for this opportunity, Anil, and also for this excellent event. It is very useful one. As already, Johannes, just in your remark now, you insisted on sustainable development and how people are interacting and how any segments of the population should, contribute in this common effort. I think, and this is why this side event is well constructed, because we have youth, you have regional representation from Africa, you have from Europe, and you are indicating private sector, ethical sector, and so on. Now, looking to climate change, projection, the main feature of the climate change projection is in coming years we will deal with extreme events. What it means, the extreme event that is a lot of water in short time. And also long droughts. The distribution is totally modified. That means we should really think about how we can use the tampon process concept. This is something, and this is what I am proud. The second thing which is really important now, let's take in consideration a city, a big city with enough resource, water resource now. I mean for people use or agricultural use, irrigation and so on. With climate change, we will be concerned by intermittence of this water. The city now providing water 24 a day to each user. In 10 years, 20 years, we can lose this opportunity. Why? Because this concentration in time, this is bad distribution. Now it is time to start thinking how we can start to make good planification and how to manage scarcity and how we can manage intermittence. I'm sorry, those are two terms which are lacking, because now we are speaking about crisis management, risk management. Now we should go beyond. We should think about knowledge risk management. We need anticipation, because now the rhythm is really so accelerated. And even developed countries have not the capacity to adapt. That we need some time to anticipate. And second thing, we should also install in water resource management the kind of vigilance. We know what is the vigilance in security, but also we should install. And this is the concept. And yes, thank to youth, thank to the regional, because all the regions in the world are not well equipped with the same capacity. I know that WMO is doing a great job. I know because I know they are from there. So I am not demagoguing, it is good. And I think, yes, we are in good hands, but this is some concept we can introduce. And once again, thank you very much for this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdallah. I don't think we are great enough yet, because the situation is not good enough yet. So we all together need to acknowledge that we are, partially still failing the expectations that young people have, that poor people have, that the people have who don't even know that COP happens. Most of the people on this planet probably are busy playing on their PlayStation 5 in Germany, where I come from, or trying to survive hacking away in some dry field in an African country, or trying to plant some rice anywhere in Asia. So how do we make sure that we connect and that we really build a global community? Ede, I want to go back to you. Can we bring her back to the screen, please? Ede, if you think in your role as the principal scientist, what can we do to make sure that all these aspects that we have heard now, transparency, inclusion, the support to the finances, fair access to information and knowledge, how can we, what is it that you require from us or from politicians or from anybody to make sure that we can create a more hopeful future for the young people in your country?
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity that you have extended to the government of Nigeria to maybe reiterate what we are doing in terms of water management and also mitigation actions of that comes out of issues of related to water. So first and foremost, Nigeria will lay emphasis on whole societal approach. if we are very key in on the net zero emission reduction, and you know that the government can't do this alone, so there is need for us to carry all stakeholders along with the policies and strategies that has to do with issues of water. So I would like a capacity building for subnational government, and also for Nigeria to have to build the capacities of climate actors in the local communities, and also to have maybe technology transfer. That is also very key to us. These people are the people, day-to-day activities has to also to do with issues of water management. And also I would like Nigeria to have a very standard wastewater treatment, which is one of the activities that also contributes to the mission of Nigeria. So I would also like a situation where most pump systems are switched to solar energy, or even hydro energy, instead of using the diesel generators that is currently in use. So I would also like financial mobilization. I would like also to talk about issues of political will. Political will is not really a challenge at this point, because we have done a lot of activities to make sure that the political heads are carried along. So basically, it's centered on technology transfer, it's centered on finance, it's centered on capacity building, and is also centered on massive awareness creation, and also it's centered on mainstreaming this strategy into subnational agenda, so that the sub-states can take climate action. So I think this is what we need, and it will go far in making sure that Nigeria actually achieve the targets that we have put in the NDC in the water sector. So over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. While you were speaking, and because I am from a country, I'm German myself, I'm from a very developed country, I thought about the errors that we have done in Germany. We have polluted our rivers so heavily that it took the German society and government around 30 years and probably 100 billion easy in investment to clean up the mess that we have created. So we need to make sure that we not only transfer capacity and knowledge and technology, but also help you avoiding those errors that we have made. And we have made those errors on your accounts, because you cannot do the same errors, and we have, to be honest, abused of the resources that we got from other parts of the world. So I am maybe not very politically correct now, but the availability of resources that we had in Germany to clean up the mess we created, we of course paid for also with money that we made in trading nice cars to all the world. So we need to really have that in the back of our minds. And if you want to stay connected after this event with the Water and Climate Coalition to help us with your views, how we can do things differently, then that would be really appreciated. But I want to go back to our two people here who are on our panel, so to speak. So Lindsay, if you think, if you had the 100 billion a year, what would you do? How would you invest them to make sure that the young people's voice are not only heard, as you said, but what are your most provocative asks? What do we need to do differently so that actually we don't just do a gradual change in the same way of our economic system or of our political decision-making system? What are your provocative asks? What do we need to do different to actually change the course, not just adjust the course by 2 degrees?
Thanks, Johannes. Actually, I'm working on a project right now focused on young people in the Middle East, and I did a consultation with several different youth groups. It had 50, and we also ran a survey, and one of the biggest outcomes from that was their desire, big desire for more capacity development. Entering into the job force, into the water sector, into the climate change sector, I've been hearing the struggle over and over again that often entering, you can come in with a master's degree, even a PhD, but you're still not getting that experience. And so if I'm here as a leader echoing their voices, I would push for more capacity development. That would be with learning more about climate change in every aspect, as well as to capacity development in their jobs. They're the next leaders of the future, and they need to know the issues, and also finding those positions as well and preparing them well. Yeah. I also wanted to make one more point just to respond to your excellent point. As the leaders meeting, one of our biggest messages is to have one data portal for water and climate data to be collective under one system. So it's not just dispersed from country to country, but it can be more easily accessible to the general public and for decision makers. So I wanted to address that point because that's something that the leaders on the panel were really pushing for on this coalition. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, for touching upon this. Better capacity in terms of actually integrating youth into decision-making processes is one of the big asks of the youth COP that just ended 2 days ago. So one central point in their ask is empower us to participate, because just having them sitting around and saying nice words doesn't help. We need to empower them to partake. They need the structures to engage. There is no UN organization for the youth. There is no real structure in many countries for youth actually to decide on allocation of budgets, on development of policies, on legal frameworks. So, and I am German again. I bring that example because I blame my own country. In the run-up of the new government now, we had this discussion, do we lower the voting age from 18 to 16? And of course, the majority of the population doesn't want to do that, but the majority of the population is age 56 and above. So of course, they don't want this. So this is the skewed mindset of our current systems that we need to change. And I think we need now alternative solutions, and we actually need to stop smiling nicely at young people and actually giving them part of our power. And when I say our power, it's the guys with the gray hair, really. So this is the issue here. So, but now I'm getting emotional. Maybe I shouldn't. Ingrid, what is your contribution? Maybe with the water tracker, can we use the water tracker to highlight some of the entry points where we need to make a change now? Do you want to maybe say 2 words about that?
Yes, and I would also like all of that money that you mentioned earlier to Lindsay, not just for the water tracker, but please, yes, let's talk afterwards. I'll give you my card. We would like that money because we really need to completely transform the way that we manage water systems. Our distinguished colleague from the IPCC, he mentioned exactly this. The science could not be more clear about the interactions between water and climate change, and we are already experiencing them every day in every part of the world. We are having extended droughts, floods, etc., and all of these sorts of things. And what this really touches on is that we're experiencing a lot of uncertainty and variability. And so because we are not exactly sure how much water we are going to have at any given time in the future, we need transformative risk management-based approaches to water management that take this uncertainty into account. It's incredibly important that we have this. There are examples. This is already being implemented across the world. Mexico City right now is undergoing a massive, massive study of its water infrastructure system and completely overhauling it. And this is a decade-long and plus project to look at its water risks and how they are changing over time because they are extremely vulnerable to both floods and droughts. And the fact is we're not just getting one or the other, we're getting them both oftentimes. And so being able to manage kind of both sides of that coin Johannes mentioned the water tracker, and this is a new initiative of the Adaptation Action Coalition, the AAC. And what we're trying to do there is really to use a water term, to daylight water or to expose water in national climate planning, because we know that it's really embedded, much like groundwater. It is embedded into our national climate plans, but we don't often see it. And if we don't see it and if we don't explicitly account for it, then we're going to have some problems in the future. We know that. As we said, the science is very clear. So I would like all that money to transform our water systems, and yeah, we can talk about it more.
Yeah, I'll start with a personal donation. Yeah, I want to open the floor again to our audience here. So we will have now about 10-15 minutes at the most to close up this event, and I see some hands in the audience. So I'd like to give the opportunity for the audience to do short statements or ask short questions, and then I would try to wrap it up.
Thank you. My name is David Ellison, and I do a lot of work on forest-water interactions in particular. And I think it's great what you're doing. I really love to see the attention to water. I've been arguing we should have more attention to water since at least 2012, where I published a paper talking about this in the context of climate discussions. And I'm wondering, so you want to map water, right? But it's really the forest-water interaction that drives the water availability in the long run, right? So you have to look at vegetation, trees, forest, cover, and water as a sort of symbiotic whole. So I'd like to hear anything you can say about how much that's actually being considered.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's an important part of the solution, and yes, we know about it for years. I'm not on. Okay, maybe I'm on this one. Yeah. Okay. So that of course is an important part of the solution, and it's as you speak. We know since the early 70s, when the first ESO report, Exxon report on climate came out, they had predicted within 5% today's temperature and today's ppm of CO2. It's not a surprise to us. We knew it since I was a kid, and we haven't acted upon it. So that's a bit shameful for our generation, I guess. And it's the same with the water problems. We know about these things. We now need to make sure we link climate and water for resilience, for adaptation, and for mitigation, because there is none of those without the interlinkage of the cryosphere, hydrosphere, and all the atmospheric parameters, the carbon cycle and the energy cycle. So I want to ask Tom and Ede, can you give us your last wise words? So if you had the 2 sentences that you want us to carry around these days in the COP and shout at every decision makers, what are your 2 sentences? Ede, do you want to go first?
Okay, I grew up in a little community where access to good drinking water was a very huge problem, and it impacted my life in a negative way. So if I have the opportunities or the resources that we need, I would like to, or if I become a political head tomorrow, I will make sure that every subnational actions or agenda, they should mainstream issues of water to it. Water is life, and water is a priority, and water is a connector to every other agenda, both locally and globally. So issues of water should not be taken slightly, because it has a lot of disadvantage when it is not right. So I encourage, my last word would be for African developing countries to make sure that they prioritize issues of water and access to clean water for all. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Ede. Tom, your final words of wisdom, please.
Well, thanks, Johannes. And I wanted to pick up on something that Ada mentioned earlier about Nigeria's strategy and how they've incorporated wastewater into that, because I think it's such a big untapped area in terms of climate solutions. 80% of all wastewater globally is untreated, discharged directly to the environment. 10% of global methane emissions are from untreated wastewater. And it impacts on freshwater biodiversity, it impacts on water security. I think there's so many great opportunities around solving this wastewater problem in terms of solving industrial increasing demand for water. There's a really good example I would point people towards in Sao Paulo. It's called the Aquapolo project, an industry public sector partnership where industry signed up for 41 years to purchase reuse municipal wastewater, and they were able to build one of the largest water reuse plants in Latin America. And this really helped in a place like Sao Paulo mitigate against the impacts of drought. So I'd really encourage people who are involved in NDC development and the climate community at large to really consider wastewater treatment, wastewater reuse as an important climate solution, because I think it's low-hanging fruit and it has so many benefits.
Go to our, now I'm on. Thanks, Tom. We go to the people on our podium. So Ingrid, do you want to say your last words? I don't know if this mic works.
We're able to switch them. Yes, I think we're good. All right. Yes. So I think, one of the things that I just really want to emphasize is that, we talk a lot about water as a risk, and I've already mentioned that on the stage. Others have mentioned it as well, but really I want to emphasize, as was just mentioned by Tom and Edith, that water is actually a solution as well. There are a lot of water solutions, and they are available now, today. We are involved in a number of them. My organization, Alliance for Global Water Adaptation, or AGWA, work on a number of these tools and solutions to help build a water resilient future. And as Edith said, it has so many co-benefits across society and across the economy. It's not just the climate agenda, it's the sustainable development agenda, it's the Sendai DRR agenda as well. These water solutions can have impacts for all of our global development agendas. So, and just for our colleague who asked the question about the forests, I did want to get back to that just really quickly. There's a wonderful group called it's very complicated. We know that forest-water interactions are very complicated, but they are essential to consider. There's a great group called the Forest and Water Champions that work specifically on these issues, and I can get you in touch with them. Cheers.
Good, thanks. Now, last and not least, our youngest participant and a woman, so maybe I should be fired as a moderator next time. Lindsay, you have the floor for your last remarks.
Thanks, Johannes. My last word is invest in young people. No, can you hear me? Good? I think we're good. Invest in young people, have conversations with them, take on mentorship, any way that you can kind of prepare them for the next stage, specifically in the water sector. I cannot emphasize this enough. We have so many young people I'm in touch with. They're hungry for more knowledge of not only within to good. Okay, sorry. To follow the actions of the coalition. We're really pushing for collaborative actions with different members, so that can be your organization. And we're really excited for you guys to follow us along our journey here.
Okay, thanks. This is a really interesting conversation, and although it's the end of the day and everybody is tired, I think this is a super important topic. We really need to re-waterize our environment. We need to think water and climate, and we can do that. We have all the people around that we need to do that, so please join us in the Water and Climate Coalition. Shamila ASG from UNESCO sits here in this audience. She's one of the driving forces of that. We had IPCC here. We have all these wonderful people here. So please join us in this coalition. We can link all the other wonderful activities that are around this all together, because we need to be bigger. We need to be so big that we can't fail in this. If a bank is big enough not to fail, why is the people not big enough not to fail? So let's join us, let's make us bigger. And I had this very nice quote earlier from a participant in the cryosphere pavilion, be the change you want to see. So we need to be that change. We need to work together to make that happen. Last thing is a little propaganda. Tomorrow at 11, we will have Lindsay on the panel with the Hungarian president and other important people in room 4. So there will be the official announcement of the leaders group where Lindsay is a participant. If you have time or you know somebody who should be interested, make them go into room 4 at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And with that, I would like to thank Serena from UNU, Anil, all the wonderful people from SIWI, and everybody who has been in this event, the audience, our speakers here, the people online. Thanks a lot. You have made that my day ends really positive. So thanks to all of you, and goodbye.